Happy Independence Day. It is July 4th. Be safe today. Don't do anything stupid. If you're going to drink, stay home. Don't drive. And, happy birthday, America. We're in 2 Kings 23:31 through 25:30. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king and reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother was Hamutal. Sounds like a drug you take, You got arthritis, take Hamutal. The daughter of Jeremiah, she was the daughter of Jeremiah from Libnah. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. Pharaoh Necho put Jehoahaz in prison at Riblah in the land of Hamath to prevent him from ruling in Jerusalem. He also demanded that Judah pay 7,500 pounds of silver and 75 pounds of gold as tribute. Pharaoh Necho then installed Eliakim, another of Josiah's sons, to reign in place of his father, and he changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. Why? Jehoahaz was taken to Egypt as a prisoner, where he died. In order to get the silver and gold demanded as tribute by Pharaoh Necho, Jehoiakim collected a tax from the people of Judah, requiring them to pay in proportion to their wealth. As it should be, right? The wealthy people shouldn't have to pay a less percentage than middle class or poor people. Yet, America thrives on the backs of working people. I think there needs to be a lot of changes in our country. What do you think? Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother was Zebidah, the daughter of Pedaiah from Rumah. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. During Jehoiakim's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon invaded the land of Judah. It's fun to say Nebuchadnezzar. Not all the names from the Old Testament are fun to say, but Nebuchadnezzar is fun to say. Try it. Say Nebuchadnezzar. It's just fun. I'm weird, and I'm okay with that. Jehoiakim surrendered and paid him tribute for 3 years, but then rebelled. Then the Lord sent bands of Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders against Judah to destroy it, just as the Lord had promised through his prophets. Because remember, we just read that yesterday. These disasters happened to Judah because of the Lord's command. He had decided to banish Judah from his presence because of the many sins of Manasseh, who had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood. The Lord would not forgive this. So see, there are some things that you're not going to get away with. You might think that you're getting away with it. You're not. The rest of the events in Jehoiakim's reign and all his deeds are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. That's some title, isn't it? When Jehoiakim died, his son Jehoiakim became the next king. Now see, Pharaoh Necho, I'm itchy this morning apparently, Pharaoh Necho did us a disservice by renaming Eliakim Jehoiakim, because now we have to deal with Jehoiakim. Shame. The king of Egypt did not venture out of his country after that, for the king of Babylon captured the entire area formerly claimed by Egypt, from the brook of Egypt to the Euphrates River. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. Just like Grandpa. His mother was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan from Jerusalem. Jehoiakim did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father had done. Apple doesn't fall far, apparently. During sometimes it does, though. Some of them do a complete turnaround, so that's interesting. During Jehoiakim's reign, the officers of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came up against Jerusalem and besieged it. Nebuchadnezzar himself arrived at the city during the siege. Then King Jehoiakim, along with the queen mother, his advisors, his commanders, and his officials, surrendered to the Babylonians. In the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he took Jehoiakim prisoner. As the Lord had said beforehand, Nebuchadnezzar carried away all the treasures from the Lord's temple and the royal palace. Because remember, who was it? Hezekiah? Was it Hezekiah that showed the Babylonian king everything? In the treasury, everything, in the royal palace, everything. Carried away all in the royal palace. He stripped away all the gold objects that King Solomon of Israel had placed in the temple. King Nebuchadnezzar took all of Jerusalem captive, including all the commanders and the best of the soldiers, craftsmen, and artisans, 10,000 in all. Only the poorest people were left in the land. The one time that it pays to be poor. Nebuchadnezzar led King Jehoiakim away as a captive to Babylon, along with the queen mother, his wives and officials, and all Jerusalem's elite. He also exiled 7,000 of the best troops and 1,000 craftsmen and artisans, all of whom were strong and fit for war. Then the king of Babylon installed Mattaniah, Jehoiakim's uncle, as the next king, and he changed Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah. Why do they keep changing the names? I mean, Mattaniah's fine, it's easy to say. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Libnah. So, we're back with the pain medication. Watch out for those side effects, though. Make you do evil things. Sorry, these glasses blur so easily. I need new ones. But Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Jehoiakim had done. These things happened because of the Lord's anger against the people of Jerusalem and Judah, until he finally banished them from his presence and sent them into exile. Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. So on January 15th, during the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon led his entire army against Jerusalem. They surrounded the city and built siege ramps against its walls. Jerusalem was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah's reign, which is his last one, right? By July 18th, in the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, the famine in the city had become very severe, and the last of the food was entirely gone. Then a section of the city wall was broken down, and all the soldiers fled. Since the city was surrounded by the Babylonians, they waited for nightfall. Then they slipped through the gate between the two walls behind the king's garden and headed toward the Jordan Valley. But the Babylonian troops chased the king and caught him on the plains of Jericho, for his men had all deserted him and scattered. They took him to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where they pronounced judgment upon Zedekiah. They made Zedekiah watch as they slaughtered his sons. Then they gouged out Zedekiah's eyes, bound him in bronze chains, and led him away to Babylon. That's horrible, to have to watch your children be slaughtered. And then gouge out your eyes. Just kill me too. Just kill me too. On August 14th of that year, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard and an official of the Babylonian king, arrived in Jerusalem. He burned down the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. He destroyed all the important buildings in the city. Then he supervised the entire Babylonian army as they tore down the walls of Jerusalem on every side. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, then took as exiles the rest of the people who remained in the city, the defectors who had declared their allegiance to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the population. But the captain of the guard allowed some of the poorest people to stay behind in Judah to care for the vineyards and fields. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars in front of the Lord's temple, the bronze water carts, and the great bronze basin called the sea, and they carried all the bronze away to Babylon. There was a lot of bronze. Remember, it was too much to measure when they first built the temple, because that sea is huge. That sea is a gigantic bathtub. I mean, I could bathe in it. I think me and both my kids could bathe in it. Probably even a couple other people, all at the same time. You wouldn't want to, because that's gross, but you know what I'm saying. It's just big. They also took all the ash buckets, shovels, lamp snuffers, dishes, and all the other bronze articles used for making sacrifices at the temple. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, also took the incense burners and basins, and all the other articles made of pure gold or silver. The weight of the bronze from the two pillars, the sea, and the water carts was too great to be measured. These things had been made for the Lord's temple in the days of King Solomon. Each of the pillars was 27 feet tall. The bronze capital on top of each pillar was 7.5 feet high and was decorated with a network of bronze pomegranates all the way around it. So 27 and 7.5 is 34.5 feet long. That's a lot of bronze. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took with him as prisoners Seraiah the high priest, Zephaniah the priest of the second rank, and the 3 chief gatekeepers. And from among the people still hiding in the city, he took an officer who had been in charge of the Judean army, 5 of the king's personal advisors, the army commander's chief secretary who was in charge of recruitment, and 60 other citizens. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them all to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and there at Riblah, in the land of Hamath, the king of Babylon had them all put to death. So the people of Judah were sent into exile from their land. Then King Nebuchadnezzar appointed Gedaliah son of Ahikam and grandson of Shaphan as governor over the people he had left in Judah. When all the army commanders and their men learned that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah as governor, they went to see him at Mizpah. These included Ishmael son of Nethaniah, Johanan son of Kareah, Seraiah son of Tanhumeth the Netophathite, and Jezaniah son of the Maacathite, and all their men. Gedaliah vowed to them that the Babylonian officials meant them no harm. "Do not be afraid of them. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and all will go well for you," he promised. But in mid-autumn of that year, Ishmael son of Nethaniah and grandson of Elishama, who was of the royal family, went to Mizpah with 10 men and killed Gedaliah. He also killed all the Judeans and Babylonians who were with Gedaliah at Mizpah. Then all the people of Judah, from the least to the greatest, as well as the army commanders, fled in panic to Egypt, for they were afraid of what the Babylonians would do to them. In the 37th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim of Judah, Evil-Merodach ascended to the Babylonian throne. He was kind to Jehoiakim and released him from prison on April 2nd of that year. He spoke kindly to Jehoiakim and gave him a higher place than all the other exiled kings in Babylon. He supplied Jehoiakim with new clothes to replace his prison garb, and allowed him to dine in the king's presence for the rest of his life. So the Babylonian king gave him a regular food allowance as long as he lived. I wonder how much longer after that it was that he lived. I mean, that was pretty decent of this king to do that. Nebuchadnezzar did a lot of damage to Jerusalem and Judah, but God said it was going to happen. You know, you can't keep turning your back on God. You can't keep snubbing him and then expect him to do great miracles for you. You need to turn your heart away from your sins. You need to welcome God into your life, into every aspect of your life. You can't be like, okay, God, I want you in my job. I want you with my family life, but I don't want you in my party life. Every aspect. Acts 22:17 through 23:10. After I, Paul, returned to Jerusalem, I was praying in the temple and fell into a trance. I saw a vision of Jesus saying to me, "Hurry, leave Jerusalem, for the people here will not accept your testimony about me." But Lord, I argued, they certainly know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you, and I was in complete agreement when your witness Stephen was killed. I stood by and kept the coats they took off when they stoned him. But the Lord said to me, "Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles." The crowd listened until Paul said that word. Then they all began to shout, "Away with such a fellow! He isn't fit to live!" They yelled, threw off their coats, and tossed handfuls of dust into the air. maybe that was their custom, so we are very angry at you, so we're going to throw this dust in the air. They had strange customs back then. The commander brought Paul inside and ordered him lashed with whips to make him confess his crime. He wanted to find out why the crowd had become so furious. When they tied Paul down to lash him, Paul said to the officer standing there, "Is it legal for you to whip a Roman citizen who hasn't even been tried?" Why would it be legal to whip anybody without any kind of trial? And especially because he didn't know. He wanted to find out why they were so furious, why the crowd was furious. He didn't know. And he's just going to whip him anyway? Something wrong with that. When the officer heard this, he went to the commander and asked, "What are you doing? This man is a Roman citizen." And I like that they just take his word for it. So the commander went over and asked Paul, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I certainly am," Paul replied. "I am too," the commander muttered, "and it cost me plenty." So apparently you could buy Roman citizenship back in that day, which of course Paul didn't. He was born there. He has it by birth. Paul answered, "But I am a citizen by birth. Sorry, I spoiled it for you." The soldiers who were about to interrogate Paul quickly withdrew when they heard he was a Roman citizen, and the commander was frightened because he had ordered him bound and whipped. The next day the commander ordered the leading priests into session with the Jewish high council. He wanted to find out what the trouble was all about, so he released Paul to have him stand before them. Gazing intently at the high council, Paul began, "Brothers, I have always lived before God with a clear conscience." Not all of us can say that. Instantly Ananias the high priest commanded those close to Paul to slap him on the mouth. But Paul said to him, "God will slap you, you corrupt hypocrite. What kind of judge are you to break the law yourself by ordering me struck like that?" Those standing near Paul said to him, "Do you dare to insult God's high priest?" "I'm sorry, brothers, I did not realize he was the high priest," Paul replied. "For the scriptures say, you must not speak evil of any of your rulers." See how respectful he becomes for those in charge? When you're in trouble, are you going to be that respectful? Am I? I don't know, because I tend to be a little bit sarcastic. I had to work on that. Okay, a lot of bit sarcastic. I know, so I need a lot of work. It's fine, God's with me. I'm a work in progress. He's still working on me. Paul realized that some members of the high council were Sadducees and some were Pharisees, so he shouted, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, as were my ancestors, and I am on trial because my hope is in the resurrection of the dead." This divided the council, the Pharisees against the Sadducees. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angels or spirits, but the Pharisees believe in all of these. So there was a great uproar. Some of the teachers of religious law who were Pharisees jumped up and began to argue forcefully. "We see nothing wrong with him," they shouted. "Perhaps the spirit of an angel spoke to him." As the conflict grew more violent, the commander was afraid they would tear Paul apart, so he ordered his soldiers to go and rescue him by force and take him back to the fortress. So even the religious leaders were violent people. How can you rule anyone, any section of people, if you're a violent person? If the first thing you want to do is just argue and fight, that gets you nowhere. If you can't sit down and have a calm, intelligent discussion about things that you disagree on, you're not fit to rule. And I've seen countless people on social media that they just want to argue and fight. You don't agree with me, you're wrong, I'm right, and this is why you have to believe me. And if you don't believe me and if you don't agree with me right now, I'm going to keep getting on to you. I'm going to start calling you names. I'm going to start putting you down. I'm going to start condemning your character. Just, what are you doing? What kind of person are you that the first thing you want to do is just get mad? How about trying to understand the other person's point of view, the other person's beliefs? How about respect their differences? Our country is in such turmoil. It is pretty much all over the world, I guess. But, again, I live here, so I see it firsthand. Americans. I am not proud to say that I am an American anymore. I'm ashamed of the way America has gone, the way it's become and still becoming. It's not going down a good road right now. Anyway, there's your Bible reading for today. Got a little bit deep there at the end, didn't it? Okay. So again, happy 4th of July. Don't forget to click over here for Psalms and Proverbs. Have a great day. God bless you. I love you. Bye-bye.